welcome to Kitty Talks, the podcast that shows you how to build a life in alignment with your soul. I'm your host, Kitty Waters, serial entrepreneur and co-creator of the Network for Transformational Leaders. Each week, I interview top thought leaders that are changing the world. They share their life stories on tips on how you can find your purpose. We all have a gift we can bring to the world. Do you feel dead to life? Like there's more to it, but you don't know where to start? Perhaps you don't fit in and you can't understand why. Are you pushing all the time and getting nowhere? Do you long to finally be sure which is the right path for you? This podcast is sponsored by my Do Your Dharma course. This 8-week online course, self-study, shows you how to find your purpose. The course demystifies the subject of Dharma and shows you that by following your highest excitement, you can unlock your greatest potential and create the life of your dreams. Go to www.kittytalks.com/do your Dharma. Without further ado, let's dive into the next episode. So, welcome to this week's episode of Kitty Talks. In this week's episode of Kitty Talks, we're going to do something a little bit different. So, I am going to talk to you about my journey so far and what I have learned through podcasting over the course of the last year. I very much listened to my intuition. This time last year, I got a real call. I got a real inner voice speaking to me saying, you need to interview all the amazing people that you have in your network. And for those of you that don't know, I am the co-creator of an organisation called the Network for Transformational Leaders, and I run that organisation with an amazing lady called Marsha Martin. It is a safe space, a peer group for people doing transformation work. The idea is that we come together to share ideas, and effectively it's like my soul family. And very early on, I learnt that who we surround ourselves with is who we become. And so I got the call from them upstairs to basically say, you need to create a podcast and you need to interview these people around their life stories and around their life journeys. And so I didn't really know what I was doing or why I was doing it, except that it seemed like a good idea. And actually it sounded like something I would enjoy doing. So I'd never set up a podcast before. And obviously all my inner voice said, well, I don't know how to do that. But you learn that actually you have to take action. And so that's what I did. I took action. I went out and I created the logo and I started doing my first interviews. And the first chap I interviewed was a chap called Nick Haynes. And he's got an incredible life story. He is a great testament or great example of somebody who didn't listen to their little voice, actually. He was an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine acupuncturist, and he was on holiday with his kids. And for the previous year, he'd been having this sort of inkling inside himself that he needed to take Chinese medicine wider and to take it to the wider perspective. And he just ignored it and ignored it and ignored it. And consequently, when he was on holiday with his kids, he was taking a boat down from the top of a boatyard up on a ladder, and he fell backwards off that ladder and landed and effectively had a near-death experience. He had a very bad experience. I remember seeing his spirit pretty much float up out of his body, and he had a choice whether he was going to come back. And obviously he chose to come back, and he knew that he needed to take Chinese medicine and the vitality test bigger. So he was my first interview, and I knew there and then that I needed to create a Find and Follow Your Purpose course. When I started interviewing all these amazing thought leaders who had incredible lives, all of them described that they either had or hadn't followed their inner voice. And when they hadn't, weird and wonderful stuff happened to them. So Nick obviously fell off backwards off a ladder. Another of my guests, Gail Loveshock, I don't know if you remember her interview, but she ignored the voice for a very, very long time. Even describes being run over by an ambulance, I think. She had an accident skiing. And all these things were happening to try and wake her up because she was going in the wrong direction. And what I started to see over the coming months of doing my interviews was there was huge, huge parallels. People had either listened to the calling or had ignored it. And when they'd ignored it, the universe created an experience for them to wake up. So I've just literally interviewed a lady called Emma Mumford, and she described how she was in a kind of not abusive, but a very toxic relationship, and how that became her spiritual awakening. So two things happened. People had spiritual awakenings, and they also changed path. They also started to do something different with their lives, and they also started to do something positively with their lives. In some cases, people had negative experiences that woke them up. But in other examples of the people I've interviewed, they did listen to their inner voice, and they didn't really question it. They just put one foot in front of the other, and they started to follow what their intuition told them to do. And that's exactly what I've done with this podcast. So at the beginning, had no idea what I was doing. As I said, I started to create it, to do it. Quite quickly, I realized I had to create a Find and Follow Your Purpose course. And then, like all of us, I'm sure you're out there, you're listening, our inner voice can be good and bad. One of my guests, Melissa Ambrosini, called it the mean girl. And I think that's a great example of how we can treat ourselves. So the mean girl was saying to me, who am I to do that? Who am I to help other people find their purpose? What do I know about it? But slowly over the course of the next 6 months, I was almost drip fed through my interviews and through my experiences, the content of the course. And the next piece of the puzzle came for me when I reconnected with somebody I knew, a chap called Chris Atwood. He's a member of the Transformational Leadership Council. And he and his wife, Janet Atwood, created the Passion Test. And the Passion Test helps people tune in to what they're passionate about. Very simple. But Chris has also studied the Vedic texts, and he was fascinated by the subject of Dharma. And so Dharma is a term I'd heard of, but it's not something I knew and understood a lot about. But I decided to study with Chris and study Dharma. Now, Dharma, for you, though, of you listening who don't know what that term means, effectively it's the right path and course of action for the individual and the planet. So what the Vedic texts believe is that you are completely unique and individual, and you've been given a set of gifts and talents that nobody else has. And actually, your time on earth is for you to become the fullest expression of yourself by utilizing those gifts and talents in service to the planet. Now, when I heard about this concept, it was kind of like the final piece of the puzzle for me, because it described how when we're doing our Dharma, we become in the flow of life. And my experience has very much been when I've listened to my inner voice and when I have followed that calling without letting the fear get in the way, amazing things have happened to me. And that's how I got involved in the organization that I now run, by listening to my intuition and listening to my little voice, how I manifested my husband, how I manifested my house. So Dharma was like the final piece of the puzzle for me. And some of you will know that I then went on to create my Do Your Dharma course. I have a group of 8 women going through it at the moment who are making incredible breakthroughs. It's fantastic. So we will be opening that course up at probably in the autumn, actually, after summer. And my vision and goal is to have hundreds of women going through that course. And I know that's totally possible. And I know with you guys listening that we can do that together, because when you do your Dharma, life flows. Life isn't heavy. You're not stuck. You are in the flow of life. You have meaning, you have purpose, you live longer, you are happier, you are healthier. It just takes on a different form. And the thing about doing your Dharma, the thing about finding your purpose, is you're not going to wake up one day and just have a flash of inspiration about why you're on this planet. It doesn't work like that. Your purpose, you are always being equipped for your purpose. You are always being prepared in some way, shape or form, whether you're aware of it or whether you're conscious of it. But once we become more conscious of it, then we can tune into it and get on that correct path quicker. So this course will be for you if you are feeling stuck, if you are not really sure what to do next. You know you came here to do big things, but you don't know how to do that. And you need a community. You need people to surround yourself with that are empowered and inspired. If you are somebody that wants to make a real difference on the planet, if you know you've got a bigger calling, if you know that life holds more for you. And I'm a really good example of somebody who's taken their life from breakdowns literal nervous breakdown and 10 years worth of depression to somebody now doing their Dharma and who's created an amazing life without sort of wanting to show off. But I was financially free at 32. We have a property portfolio. My husband and I have got 15 properties between us, and I also run another business, and I obviously run my coaching business with Kitty Talks, and I get to travel around the world at network events and bring together amazing transformational leaders. And it's what I envisage, if I'm perfectly honest with you. Once I woke up and once I realised that I could pull things into my life, I started to get busy and I started to consciously manifest and create everything that I've now got in my life. And obviously, once you get there, the bar just raises and you want more. But if you're listening to this podcast, I thought I would share with you my journey so far, because you're listening to our interviews and hopefully you're listening every week. You will hear the parallels between the guests, and all of them have taken charge of their lives. So first of all, you have to take responsibility for your life, and no one else is going to fix it apart from you. So once you take responsibility, it is perfectly possible, totally possible, to create an amazing life. So good that you will pinch yourself. So now we are running the Do Your Dharma course, as I said, in the autumn. So if you want more details, you can contact me about that. We're going to be taking applications because we only really want really committed people who are really up for turning their lives around and getting connected to their soul purpose. So I'll let you know when we open nominations or open applications for that. And the Kitty Talks journey so far is going to evolve a little bit now. So I have a huge history of depression and anxiety and mental health issues in the female side of my family. And I only found this out at 28. And once I found that out at 28, I started to look into what that actually meant. And my own journey through depression, I have discovered that we internalize, if we are depressed or anxious, we're living in the past or we're living in the future. We're not living in the now. And when you're depressed, you are internalizing potentially a lot of anger. And that was certainly my journey. I was taught not to feel, not to cry. So I internalized everything. And consequently, I was also going the wrong direction in life. So I wasn't doing my Dharma. I wasn't doing the things I was supposed to be doing. I was internalizing all my emotions and all my anger. And consequently, I was depressed and anxious, which, as you can imagine, is no way to live. So what I've really found now is that my female side of my family did not speak their truth. So my grandmother, for example, she had throat cancer. And if you know anything about the mind-body connection, then you know that throat chakra is all about communication. And the fact that she got throat cancer means that she wasn't speaking and verbalizing her truth. And if for some of you listening, if you got tonsillitis as a child, that may be not exactly the same reason. You're not speaking how you feel. You're swallowing your feelings. And so the next part of my journey is to do some solo casting to speak my truth. A lot of women actually, I think, have or are going through this. We've never really spoken up. We've never really talked about how we feel. We've never really expressed ourselves, but I know it's part of my healing journey. So the format of Kitty Talks is going to change slightly. I'm going to start doing solo casts, but a bit like this. And they're going to be probably shorter, and I'm going to pick a topic, something that's coming up for me in my life, and I'm going to share with you. And if there's something you would like me to talk about, then I would love to hear from you. You can email me at kitty@kittytalks.com. So email me, let me know what type of things you would like to talk about. And it's going to be one a month. I'm going to do one of these. So please give me your feedback. I'm really keen to connect with you guys. If you haven't already done so, find me on Instagram. Find us on Facebook. Come follow us. Come join our Facebook group. That would be absolutely amazing. And the other thing we're going to be doing is we are going to be going deeper on certain topics. So as well as interviewing guests, I'm still going to be interviewing guests around their life stories and how they tuned into what they're here to do. But I'm also going to be going deeper on particular topics. So the first one we're going to be doing is around astrology. So a lot of people have this idea it's kind of hocus pocus, or it's something, bit weird. But actually, astrology dates back a long, long time, and it was used by kings and queens to predict not only the future, but do good things with. And so what we're going to be doing each week is we're going to be going deeper on a particular topic. So if there's something that interests you, that's potentially more metaphysical, more spiritual, quantum physics, something that our listeners can relate to, then please email me and let me know what you think. But that's it from me this week. Thank you so much for listening. As I said, I thought I'd just give you a little update on Kitty Talks so far. And actually, Kitty is going to talk to you going forward. So I'd love to hear from you and hear what you think and what you want to talk about. But don't worry, the interviews will continue. And if there's anyone you want me to interview, then please let me know. But thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been an amazing journey so far for me, and I really hope you guys are being inspired by the people I'm interviewing, and that you really understand that you have your own path and don't compare it to others. Just focus on what you love, do the things that come naturally to you, and listen to your intuition, and you too can create a life so good you pinch yourself. Speak to you soon. Bye. This podcast was sponsored by my Do Your Dharma course. Create a life so good that you pinch yourself. This 8-week online course demystifies Dharma and shows you how to tune in to why you're really here. Go to www.kittytalks.com/do your Dharma.